Welcome back to You're All Doomed, the podcast that gouges 13-minute-long holes in Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. I'm Jackass Mayor Greg.
Hello, I'm Brian.
This segment begins with the fading out of Lana, still with the axe buried in her sternum, and ends with a shot of two men fighting under a neon sign. As Lana's life ebbs and the camera fades, I noticed that thus far the mysterious killer is only operating at night, and just like after killing Pete and Vinny, the camera cuts to Tommy in the morning. So I think they might be trying to lead us to believe that Tommy might be sneaking out at night and committing these terrible murders.
That's an interesting observation. I didn't make that connection, but you're right. There's only been nighttime killings so far.
And he's gazing out his bedroom window out into the yard, watching some chickens peck around in the dirt below, and then suddenly hallucinates Jason again. This time it's interesting because he's already looking in that direction. The first time he had a vision of Jason, he'd looked away from the mirror and looked back and Jason was behind him. But this time, Tommy is clearly already looking in one direction and Jason appears before him. Even more interesting, there are no chickens around Jason.
Are you suggesting that he killed the chickens or ate them?
I feel like we might be, seeing into some alternate universe where chickens don't exist or something. It's just weird that 1 minute the yard is full of chickens all over the place, and then as soon as Jason arrives, maybe the chickens fucking hightailed it.
Yeah, maybe they're just so terrified by the sight of Jason that they took off. We then end up at a police station where Deputy Dodd appears to be napping while someone is yelling at Sheriff Tucker, telling him to catch the goddamn psycho that's responsible for this mess, and it's Mayor Cobb. He tells Sheriff Tucker that Pinehurst is a summer town, and they need summer dollars, and if people can't send their kids to Pinehurst, they'll be glad to send them to Cape Cod, the Hamptons, Long Island.
Yeah, all that he's missing is little anchors on his blazer.
Sheriff Tucker assures Mayor Cobb that he knows who's responsible for the murders and that it's Jason Voorhees. Mayor Cobb basically tells the sheriff that he's crazy and that Jason Voorhees had been cremated, which I had never heard before, so this is new information to me. But
yeah, this is the first time they've mentioned Jason's remains, other than the supposed dream sequence at the start of this movie.
Yeah, which we don't know if that was true or not. So, okay, I guess we've been told now that he was cremated.
Yeah, except that the sheriff already immediately introduces doubt, asking if the mayor was there to see the cremation for himself. So it's possible that the mayor has been given erroneous information, or that there's some, not cover up per se, but like, he's told something happened that was supposed to happen, but in fact, we don't know for sure that Jason's body was destroyed on a molecular level. So this sequence also makes me want to pause and ask, are we supposed to believe that the Pinehurst Trauma Recovery Center is in the Crystal Lake area? They've all heard of Jason. They're all worried that Jason's back. So are you fucking telling me that after everything Tommy went through, they bring him back there to heal from his ordeal? That's fucked up.
Right.
Why wouldn't they send him like hundreds of miles away?
You're right. I mean, if they're concerned about Jason Voorhees, then it has to be at least adjacent to Camp Crystal Lake in some way. So what the hell is Tommy still doing there? Why wouldn't, just get him out of there. Go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, even if there weren't mysterious killings going on, why would it be therapeutic for Tommy to return to the area that traumatized him so badly? I mean, I'm guessing that Trish moved away, and clearly Mrs. Jarvis no longer lives in the Crystal Lake area.
And it really does have to be close by, because I can't imagine that Jason Voorhees is just like a blanket excuse that everyone uses when there's murders going on. Like, well, it must be Jason Voorhees. And
and like the mayor seems concerned about Jason being back. And it's
true.
It's clearly the same sheriff that services the area in which Pinehurst is located. So, yeah, it's just like, that's sort of like, as you've been kind of joking, that's like Chief Brody continuing to live on Amity Island. Just move away if you're that traumatized by something.
We then get our second laundry scene in this movie, third in the series if you count the scene with Harold and Edna from part 3. Tina is just, hanging up some laundry on a clothesline, and Eddie sneaks up behind her and scares her. And that's when they just decide they're going to run off into the woods and to have some sex, even though Matt might be not too thrilled with that idea, but they're like, fuck him. Who cares?
Yeah, and I mean, the way they frame Tina, she's hanging laundry on the clothesline. I'm sure that aside from her inherent intelligence and acting ability, they must have cast her at least on some level because of her rather ample bosom. She's practically busting out of her.
I was going to say that I could think of 2 reasons why she was probably cast.
Tina and Eddie scamper off into the woods, presumably on the Hubbard's property again, and light up a cigarette or a joint. I couldn't really tell which.
What's funny, though, is we don't know how deep in the woods they are, but the particular spot that they choose is completely wide open. There's no real protection from trees. It's not like they're in a heavily wooded area. It's like this wide open, almost like lawn in the middle of the woods. So it's not exactly private, but they don't really seem to care all that much.
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously, they're distracted by each other's bodies. There is enough foliage around to allow the creepy drifter Raymond to kind of peer through the branches and spy on them as they disrobe and begin making out.
He's not watching very long. He's probably only got like a medium chubber at this point, but that's when someone comes up from behind him and stabs him in the stomach with a massive hunting knife.
Yeah, he hears the sound and turns around and boom, he gets the knife to the gut. In a poetic touch, a crow lands on a branch, cuts to the bird just after the knife plunges into Raymond's gut.
I didn't hear this myself, but there's a few articles that I read about the movie that suggests that the person who kills Raymond right here actually says kill when he does it. It doesn't really line up with anything we've seen before. I don't really know why someone would do that. But there's more than a few different sources where I saw where in the background you can hear the person say kill.
Oh, interesting. Maybe I'll listen to this with headphones on later and see if I can pick it up.
So long, Raymond Joffrey.
He has a last name? I'll be darned. Raymond was played by Sonny Shields, who appeared in a disaster flick called Meteor, which we might get to someday as we watch through a bunch of 70s and 80s disaster flicks. He was also in a couple episodes of The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, which was a spin-off of BJ and the Bear. So,
what does the BJ stand for?
Well, that's my question. Is like we've had BJ Betty and now BJ and the Bear. There's not much else online about Sonny Shields. I couldn't even find out whether or not he's still alive. So Sonny is a nickname, but that's how he was credited, and I don't see anything else for him.
No, the only tidbit that I was able to find about Raymond was that his kill was censored by the MPAA, basically eliminating the killer twisting the knife in his abdomen after stabbing him. So it was probably just a little bit too gruesome, and they just cut that part out. So what we're left with is a pretty underwhelming, just kind of stab in the gut.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, it's like you had another character who was really introduced maybe a few minutes ago, but hasn't done anything of significance, and was ostensibly introduced as a suspect, and now he's been killed by this mysterious murderer. So that eliminates one possible culprit. Over in the clearing, Eddie and Tina have already climaxed, and immediately afterward, Eddie says he's going to go wash up. So no snuggle time, no helping her finish off or anything like that.
No, he telling her that he's in heaven or that he thinks he's in love or nothing like that.
Right. No, he wants to get her sauce off him immediately. It's kind of a cavalier attitude. Plus, I mean, he's in the woods, so where are you going to go wash up?
Well, we have to wait a minute to figure out where he ends up going. But in the meantime, Tina's lying down, reflecting on the glorious 38 seconds of sex that she just had with Eddie. And she's admiring the beauty of the blue sky and the trees blowing in the wind and the birds chirping when suddenly something impedes her view. It's a pair of hedge trimmers that gets lodged into her eyeballs and then clamped shut.
Oof. Yikes. Yeah, this is another iconic kill. It's a Hall of Fame kill. Pretty gruesome. We see the points of the hedge clippers plunge down and then snap together. We don't immediately see the effect, but it's just your imagination does a lot of the work for you. So, boom, Tina gets garden shears to the face. Tina was played by Deborah Voorhees, coincidental last name, credited as Debbie Sue Voorhees in this movie. She was a Playboy bunny at one point, which makes sense given her figure, and played a waitress on several episodes of the nighttime soap opera Dallas. She's now an independent writer, director, and producer, and has an upcoming project called 13 Fanboy, scheduled to be released in 2020, which may interest this audience because it has to do with someone who's hunting down people who appeared in Friday the 13th movies.
It also has appearances by Corey Feldman, Julie Aronson from Part 3, and Alice herself, Adrienne King.
That's awesome. That's one we'll definitely have to check out for sure. Debbie Sue Voorhees was also a journalist for several years and tried to teach for a number of years, but apparently the nude scene that she has in this movie cost her a couple of jobs. Once word got out that she had appeared topless, she was passed over for promotions or let go altogether. So that's a shame. But it sounds like she's found a niche elsewhere and is doing great.
Meanwhile, we see where Eddie ended up, and it's actually a little pond that he somehow knew about back in the woods. I'm guessing he's been back there a few times with Tina. So he washes up really quickly, and then he starts to make his way back to where he was with Tina on the blanket. And he finds Tina lying on her side, kind of like with her back to Eddie. And so he has to roll her over to kind of see her face. And once he does, that's when he sees that Tina's eyes have been gouged out and she's obviously dead.
Yeah, and we get to see the devastated ruin of her face, which frankly I thought would look a lot worse than it does, but it's still pretty grisly. They have a nice chasm that's been hacked between the bridge, in the bridge of her nose, between her eyes, and they're almost like empty pools of blood in her eye sockets. It's undermined slightly by the fact that you can clearly see the actress breathing, but overall, it's quick enough that you're pretty horrified. I have the sense that this death and this gore may have also been censored.
Yeah, I would imagine that. But Eddie's, pretty shocked by what he sees, and he starts to kind of stumble backward until he ends up with his back up against a tree. And no sooner is he up against the tree than does a strap come flying around from behind, pinning his head to the trunk of the tree. And from the other side of the tree, we see someone put a big branch or stick between the strap and just start twisting it over and over again until that strap is so tight it crushes Eddie's skull. And this is another one of those kills that just kind of makes you cringe when it happens, because you can feel that tension building and you can just, imagine how much pressure there is in his head.
And the sound design is great. You hear the leather of the strap creaking. They do a really quick shot of the strap gouging into Eddie's face, and blood squirting out from underneath it. And there's one shot where the actor accidentally turns the branch that's cranking the strap. He turns it the wrong way. But this is all so horrific that I never even noticed that fact. And it's the force is so great that the strap actually snaps. It's awesome. So Eddie is crushed. He was played by John Robert Dixon. This was his biggest role, and he in fact left the industry to follow a passion of motor racing, and is now actually a real estate agent. He was dating an actress named Darcy DeMoss. She had originally been cast in the role of Tina, but some disagreements over the amount of nudity she would agree to, etc., led her to be tossed aside in favor of Debbie Sue Voorhees. Darcy DeMoss, it wound up working out okay for her because she appears later in this series, so we'll talk about her next season.
The only other acting credit I was able to find for him was 1988's Assault of the Killer Bimbos, which I believe was directed by Orson Welles and stars a young Marlon Brando.
And closing the poetic loop, the crow that landed on the branch when Raymond the Drifter was killed now flies away.
This scene of Tina and Eddie getting killed has always been pretty famous as far as Friday the 13th movies go. But back in 2016, comedian and actor John LaJoie, he has a band called Wolfie's Just Fine, which is a nice little nod to a line from Terminator 2. But his band did a song called A New Beginning. And it basically what it does is it recounts John's first experience watching a horror movie and seeing a naked woman for the first time, but also seeing her get murdered all within like a 30-second span. And the song itself is great, but the video is just a fantastic recreation of this scene from the movie.
Yeah, it's practically shot for shot.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. And we encourage you to check it out. We're going to put a link to the video in the show notes for this episode, but it's really great.
Nighttime arrives again. Pam is apparently driving Reggie to see his brother, Demon. Tommy, not at all casually leaning against a tree in the front yard nearby, is very clearly hinting to be invited along, which works. They include him on their little jaunt. So he piles into the pickup truck with them. Matt is there to say goodbye and salutes as they depart. Still looking super studly, although I noticed he's wearing Sansabelt slacks, which is just a little bit dorky.
Pam's pickup truck is driving down the road, and we hear some really crazy-ass music playing. It doesn't really line up with what's happening.
No, it's like a chase scene or something.
Or even like something you'd hear out of Psycho. It's really intense and fast-paced, and all we're seeing is Pam's truck. And Greg, just hold on a second. I know you're wondering, but it's a 1964 Ford F-100 custom truck. But it's barreling down the road, and it just doesn't match up. It's almost like there was supposed to be another scene here, and they cut it out, but they forgot to resequence the music or something. But it really stands out.
Yeah, it stuck out like a sore thumb. So they arrive at this trailer park, and in fact, instead of any of the RVs, they head over to a van that seems to be kind of randomly parked nearby.
It's a pretty bitchin' van.
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love everything about Demon and his lifestyle. It's just unusual that it has to even bother to be at a trailer park. But so Reggie and his brother Demon are reunited after what seems to be a fairly extensive amount of time.
Yeah, Demon is dressed head to toe in leather and jewelry with a sweet, sweet afro.
Yeah, it's like a Jerry curl, soul glow afro.
It's spectacular.
It's spectacular. It's actually kind of funny because the same year in Marvel Comics, there was an omnipotent being who came to Earth and replicated Captain America's body, but immediately began dressing in a white leather version of this outfit and had a Jerry curl. So it's this white guy who looks a lot like Demon. I'll post an image of him on the social media so you can see. He's called
What's his name? Oh, go ahead.
He's called the Beyonder.
I was gonna say if his name was Angel, then we've got some like bizarro world thing going on.
It's pretty awesome. But Demon proves to be a very gracious, delightful host.
Yeah, I just want to point out a couple of things that I noticed in his van. So when he opens the door, it looks like there's like a blacklight poster of a skull and crossbones, except the crossbones are swords, and it's surrounded by flames, and there's a king cobra coming out of the top. There's just a lot going on with this poster.
Pitchin'.
But he's also got like a flimsy, it looks like a cutout skeleton that's hanging on the wall, like a Halloween decoration. So he's got this weird, thing with skeletons, but hey, whatever.
Well, he's a demon.
That's true.
Everything about Demon is just so delightful. He may very well be one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. They're trying to present him as kind of a badass, but he's such a warm, inviting personality that he's just like, I smile every time he's on screen.
Right.
And even as we'll see in a few coming minutes where he has moments where he slips into sort of some chauvinistic behavior, he's still he's a delight. I love this character.
Yeah, he would fit in really well with Ollie's biker gang from part 3,
Yeah.
at least like from an appearance standpoint. But the second he started talking, be like, no, I can't take you seriously, Demon. You're the nicest guy in the world. You're delightful.
Yeah, there's no way he's threatening to anybody. He just seems like a really nice man who, he lives the life the way he wants to. He's certainly enthusiastic about offering his guests something to eat. Apparently he's got an enchilada just laying around in his van. He also introduces Pam and Reggie to his girlfriend, Anita. Anita's a very nice-looking young woman, and Reggie is rather reductive of her. He doesn't even address her directly and instead says to his brother, "Where'd you get that?" Which is another instance of underscoring this movie's inherent low-level misogyny. But I also think it's funny that Reggie tries to then play Pam off as his girlfriend, and Pam seems amused by this as well.
Yeah, and Pam and Reggie end up getting in the van, and Demon, ever gracious host that he is, offers her first a taco, then an egg roll, then a sausage and cheese pizza. So he's just got food lying around all over the place.
Yeah, and he is lighting the fuse of a Force 10 gut bomb. Yeah. Back at the truck, Tommy seems remarkably concerned by the shorting out of the trailer park neon sign. Maybe the strobing effect is inducing another hallucination or something. But
yeah, it's very hypnotic for him. He's just kind of standing there and he's not like freaking out or anything. He can't look away from it.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, he didn't seem comfortable going to meet Demon. He wanted to hang out by the neon sign. So I'm not really sure why Tommy was inclined to come along on this little journey. But as he stands there, he's confronted from out of nowhere by Randy Quaid on the dirt bike. It's Junior Hubbard, and
just cackling like an idiot,
like an absolute moron. At first, he doesn't even realize who he's running into. He then sees that he recognizes the Pinehurst pickup truck and somehow puts two and two together and understands that Tommy is one of the, quote, crazies. So he really starts pushing Tommy around.
Yeah, and he's like, wait till my mom finds out about this. And so this is where I wasn't clear. Do Ethel and Junior live at this trailer park? Because the last time these guys showed up at Pinehurst, they were saying, hey, stay off our property, don't come back. And then here's Tommy at this trailer park, and Junior's freaking out in a similar way, which makes it seem like, is this their property? Is like the trailer park where they live and they were told not to come back here? Or is just this a completely separate location that Junior's also freaking out about it because these kids shouldn't be away from Pinehurst at all?
I think it's more that.
Okay.
This is certainly not where Ethel and Junior live. We've seen the farm that they inhabit.
I just didn't know if it was connected somehow.
It could be. It didn't seem like it was that close because they did have to drive. But perhaps Junior and his mother own this trailer park. They may not live there, but perhaps they own the property. But I kind of got the sense that it was more that Junior just doesn't think that the crazies should be allowed to wander anywhere they want. And, I think he just doesn't like anybody who's not his mama. There's some pretty decent containing rage acting going on here from John Shepard, who plays Tommy. He looks like he's about to snap, but he's fighting mightily to hold it in.
Yeah, Junior keeps antagonizing him, just saying that his mom's going to chop him up into itty-bitty pieces and just keeps pushing his buttons. And then I believe it's Junior that's the one that kind of like flips first, and he's like, fucking lunatic, and he takes a swing at Tommy. And we don't really get to see the fight in this scene, but you can tell that like it's on at this point.
Yeah, we're on the brink, and that's where the minute cuts out, so it's a little bit of a cliffhanger. This was a pretty momentous segment with a kill count of 3. We say farewell to Raymond the Drifter, Tina, who got gouged in the eyes, and Eddie, who got strapped across the brow against a tree. So I don't have anything else, do you?
I don't, no.
All right, then until next time, I've been Greg.
And I have been Brian.
And you are all doomed.